Hey,
Hello, good evening, Rise and Thrivers. I hope everyone is having a beautiful or had a beautiful day. We here are Rise and Thrive Together. And if you are new to Rise and Thrive Together, we want to welcome you and we are so glad that you're joining us here tonight. Let's tell you what Rise and Thrive Together, what we do, who we are. Rise and Thrive Together is a vibrant community committed to educating, empowering, and equipping you to get the results you want through real talk, real actions. And of course, if you have those two, you're going to have real results. So we are super excited to be here again tonight. Before I go on and talk about our challenge, I want to bring on my sister, my business partner. Hey, Reg, how are you?
hey sis, how are you? It is like the middle of December. We've got 15 days left until the end of the year. And if you're looking like at Raquel and I, like we're clean faced, right? A little bit of like little gloss on because we've been working. Like we have been rising and thriving toward that end of the new year from our personal one on one and to the things that we're really excited to share about in a second with what we're doing collaboratively. And I'm just so excited. I feel like for me, sis, that, it's at this point where rise and thrive together and inside of community it's come together, right? Like it's here, like we've crossed over that, what I want to say, experimental stage, right? Like you and I, like, boom, we connect, we go, and then all of a sudden, we're doing our thing, but we then kind of crossed over that next level. And I just really want to tell the viewers that's what it's about, right? When you have two, three, four, which she'll share in a minute more, how that expansion happens. And we got lives outside of Rise and Thrive Together. It's a not just a business, like she's saying, but it's a huge, it's really, I would like to say, like our mantra, like our one of our roots in the ground. No matter what we do, we're constantly rising and thriving with people, and if it's not working with them, generally we hold that vision for them, we hold that space for them. So yeah, I'm just like 15 days left, what's happening? Like I'm just like, this is crazy.
I know. It's awesome though. We do want to, before we go any further, we would be remiss if we did not acknowledge some folks who took part in our free 7-day Healthy You challenge. We are not waiting until January 1st. There is really no need to do that. We had this challenge. It ran from December 9th through December 15th. Last day was yesterday. It's absolutely tremendous 7 days. And we want to thank those exclusive members in the Rise and Thrive community that took part in our Healthy 7-Day challenge. It was absolutely amazing. Some of the challenges took you through some stuff, some working out, some drinking some water to stay hydrated. And it was just absolutely incredible. We do want to thank some of our sponsors who sponsored the prizes. Every day we had prizes. We want to thank Mary Kay. Mary Kay, one of their representatives, Jeanette Dethridge, actually donated and sponsored, and she's kind of a regular sponsor for when we have events on. So we want to thank her. We also want to thank Amy. Yes,
Yes, Amy
Amy's another
Rasquin,
one.
she will be our guest next week. Yep.
And Amy made a donation. And we want to thank our guest that we had on last week, Melanie. Melanie Levitt also made a contribution for a prize for our 7-day Healthy You challenge. And we're super excited. Those of our community members that took part in the challenge, we thank you as always. And we plan on doing this a lot more next year. So make sure you join in. It's always something new, something exciting, something creative. And we definitely come up with these challenges and they're doable. So it's not like we're going to ask you
Yes.
to climb Mount Everest. No one's doing that. Right. But there are always, always challenges to help build and grow and expand who we are as individuals. And when I say we, I mean all of us. Okay. Right. tonight, so thank you all. And tonight we have a special guest.
We do.
So, do you want to bring our special guest on? I think we should bring our special,
Well, I think I
right?
want to tell her a little bit
She's been in
about
the room
her.
long
You want to
enough.
like,
Yeah, absolutely.
all right, before we bring her out, this is an amazing Janna Lemur. She is a motivational speaker, writer, and spiritual intuitive on a mission to help women, military veterans, and healthcare workers break free from the shackles of PTSD, trauma, abuse, and burnout. And she herself has experienced, right, something from losing her own, from her own life, of almost losing her own life in a traumatic accident years ago, to finally give herself permission to acknowledge the pain and suffering that she endured and to find the support and courage to break through to the other side. She has a very similar mantra about the way I feel, which is putting healthcare workers first. So, with that, I think you've all waited long enough. Let's bring out Janna Lemur. Come on, Janna.
Hello, how are you, ladies?
Hey, Janna, nice to see you. I don't know what that was about. It was
I
28
don't need
seconds. It was like, you got 28 seconds.
that.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, both of you. I appreciate it.
Yes, yes, yes. So, what an incredible, I just did a short bio, and as you know, we are here. This is for you, episode, well, for us as Rise and Thrive Together, episode 85. And so thanks for being our 85th guest weekly. And, pretty extraordinary inside of what I say December, as we are talking about, a healthier you, mind, body, and soul. You were very generous to be the first person to jump in and one, be a guest, and two, really share yourself. And you started the challenge off, which I feel, listen, I loved all of the challenges, but I worked with you specifically to be like, Janna, get in the group, check out what people are saying. That, to this moment, is such a beautiful, meditation.
Thank you.
So, really was something that a lot of people, if you're not in our community, really simple. Find us Rise and Thrive Together community. It's our Facebook private community. And it made such a difference. Now, I usually meditate from the space of like quiet. So I was like going to sleep. And I was like, just having these I am statements. And then all of a sudden you got louder. You were like, and I was like, woke up and I was like, I am. So it was like interesting for me because I thought like I was going to wake up my family and I didn't. But I woke myself up, but like in a way that I went to sleep so empowered. So yeah, I'm just so curious about your journey, what happened. You've got the stage, Raquel, and I've got the listening. So we'll interject. We've got, people that are going to ask comments and really just share like what had, you said you had a traumatic situation happen to you and that was on your journey. So your stage is yours to share like what you want to share about your journey and here when we talk about healthier mind, body, and soul, especially in this holiday crunch.
No, I appreciate you two so much and everyone listening and watching along. It's been such a wild ride. I know anyone listening or watching today, and even you two, know that the journey of entrepreneurship and spiritual awakening and personal transformation is always evolving and never ending. So yeah, it's been an incredible ride for me. Very painful, very joyous. It's just been a little bit of everything, really. About 6 years ago, I had a experience where I almost lost my life. I had a very bad accident with an animal attack, and it landed me in the hospital for a week with sepsis and a pretty bad wound. So I think it was during that experience I really was brought to my knees in a lot of ways because my life had been going down a path that was very hard to manage. I had been a trauma OR surgical traveling nurse for about, I think, 8 years at the time. I've been doing it for 13 years now. So someone that's very empathic and highly sensitive and spiritually attuned. I didn't realize that seeing so much trauma in my personal life growing up in the military and then in surgery had a massive impact on me. So when I had the accident, I really went to a very dark place and had to seek counsel and PTSD counseling, and I was suffering greatly. So it was in that dark time. I kind of considered myself in a closet, really, just a dark closet of suffering. I couldn't work. I could barely function. And it was in that time that I started to heal. Like, God literally stopped me in my tracks and just told me, Janna, you have to stop. You have to look at your life. You have to stop trying to heal and fix and save everyone else. And you have to look in the mirror at your own suffering, really. So that was kind of the beginning for me of this massive transformation. And that took me on a road where I did a lot of deep diving and my own healing journey. Started writing a couple books, started writing an oracle deck, started doing a lot of prayer and meditation, and eventually started helping women, military veterans, and then healthcare workers that were suffering greatly too. So a lot's happened in between, but that's pretty much been a snapshot picture of what happened a long time ago.
Hey, sis, you got a question for her? Because I'm writing to people, because we are first time, by the way, guys, real talk here. First time in a year and a half, got us in our Facebook group community. So it's the first time people are watching it. So I am checking out the comments there, and we'll pass them along the way. So big hi from one of your dear friends and our guest for next week, Amy.
Awesome.
And Chelsea saying hi as well. So I'll be managing that while Raquel might be asking you some questions.
Awesome.
So I do have a question. I want to hear more about the animal attack, but more specifically, I want to know, at what point did that transition take place? Because there's a point where some people can identify that it was this point. That's when the shift, and I became more spiritual and relied on God versus however you were living your life before.
Right. I was on complete autopilot, traveling every 13 weeks, just going nonstop. And when I had the accident, after the hospitalization for a week, I came out and I just did counseling and therapy and really just hid out from the world for a little bit because I actually could not work for a while. And it was 5 months later, my girlfriend called me and said, we have to go to Scotland. And I said, and we both were on a spiritual journey. And I said, what's in Scotland? And she said, I don't know, but something that's going to change our lives. And I have like goosebumps right now because in that moment, I just knew that there was something in Scotland that I had to go there for. And I just told her, I said, I can't afford it. I haven't worked. And I can't actually go. I want to go. So she lent me the money. She said, we have to go. I said, okay, let's do it. So she lent me the money. I ended up paying her back a few months later. And we went to Scotland for 3 weeks, actually. We went to a wedding. We had an amazing trip. We went all over Scotland. And at the last day, nothing spiritual had happened significantly beyond us reading and talking about God and spirituality. And then the last day we find this art gallery and we walk inside. It's like a mom and pop shop and we're in there for an hour. She buys a few things. I'm looking around and I see this painting that this woman from Scotland, she was a Scottish artist. She did one image of a Japanese fighting fish and it was done in chalk. And it was the most beautiful image I've ever seen in my life. And I just stood there and stared at it for 20 minutes, captivated. And I told my friend, I said, I think I have to have this painting, this image. And she said, I'll get it for you. Pay me back with the trip. And I said, okay. So I brought it home. And it was actually that painting that when I got home, I was home for a couple weeks. And one night I just couldn't sleep. I was having all kinds of just crazy dreams and everything. I woke up and the painting was in my living room, like on the mantle. And I was just looking at it thinking, God, it's such a beautiful picture. And I picked it up and I took it near me. And at some point, like I was looking at it and this veil had lifted. That's all I can describe it. It was like this veil in my mind's eye. If anyone's ever had like a spiritual awakening, Kundalini awakening, coming to Jesus moment, it was just this veil was being lifted. And I heard from God, I heard from my higher self. It was just this communication about my life and my purpose, and this sense of like complete total love that I had never felt in human form came over me. And I remember just weeping, holding this image and just weeping, thinking, I can't believe this is happening to me, like such a supernatural experience. Although I had had them throughout my life, like I had had visions, I had seen like prophecies, like I had had prophetic images before and always very intuitive. Nothing of this nature had happened before. So I just remember praying and thanking God. And I looked to my right and I saw a book like floating in the air. And when I looked at it, I couldn't see the title. I couldn't see anything, but I knew it was my book. I knew that I had written it. It was published and it was a work that I was supposed to do. And then I looked right in front of me and I was speaking on stage and I couldn't see how many people were there. It was me on a stage speaking. And it was as if there was like a projector behind me that was projecting these images. I had never seen visions like that before. I had had visions in dreams and insights, but never to that nature. I got up, I moved to the other part of the couch, and it was as if there was like someone, I say someone, it wasn't human, but it was this entity that placed this blanket from my head all the way down to my feet. And I grew up being somewhat religious, like I grew up in the Christian faith. And I just closed my eyes and I said, it was like the blanket of peace that is beyond words or understanding. I don't remember the exact scripture, but this blanket of peace was non-human. Like I had had struggles with a lot of abuse growing up, a lot of, sadness and, trauma. So I knew that very well. I didn't know peace. I didn't know the opposite of suffering that much. So this blanket of peace that really came beyond understanding was something that changed my whole life. So that was 6 years ago. So really, to answer your question, it was in that moment. It was in the trip to Scotland. It was in the picture. It was in that transformative experience that I knew that I was being called to write, speak, teach, and really help other people that were suffering as much as I was, or even more.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. You did mention something, and I want to pull it out just for our listeners, is you made reference to God and you made reference to spirituality and a
Yeah.
higher being. Explain that, because for me, listening, it just sounded like two separate
Right.
things. So I just want to know what your take is, how you understand it.
So, growing up, I didn't grow up religious per se, but there was a few years in my teens that there was Christianity imprinted upon me. So I had this view of a very traditional view of God and Christianity for those formative years. And after I turned 18, I just started to seek more spirituality. I felt that traditional religion for me was very rigid. It had too many walls. There was too many rules. It held me captive in a lot of ways. And I wanted to explore beyond that. Like I wanted to open up my mind and my heart. And by the time the awakening happened, I had already been experimenting with spirituality outside of religion. So I had been doing Reiki healing I had been doing channeling sessions. I was doing oracle card readings for myself and clients, cranial sacral therapy. So for me, when that happened, it wasn't that traditional Christian Jesus Christ coming down. But for me, God represents universal source energy. That's just me personally. It's a part of who I am. It's a part of who I believe everyone is. It's all in the same thing. So yeah, that's, I guess, what I meant. It's not so much in that traditional sense of religion.
Okay.
Thank you for
Gotcha.
sharing that.
Yeah.
So all of this that happens, has you now from the moment of when you're like awake and you're getting now these like literally this vision of a floating book.
Mm-hmm.
From that time until when did the book come out, and when did all of this sort of kind of unravel and fold and get to this where we are now in your life of working with people and working with healthcare workers, like
Right.
specifically that's like your passion.
Right. So when that happened, I remember feeling very like elated, overwhelmed, excited, and scared, because I thought, I don't know how I'm going to ever bring all this to fruition. Like, I had no idea. I didn't have connections in the industry. I'd never written a book. I'd always been a writer. I've written since I was a young child, and I was a good writer, but I didn't have books. I just felt like all this is very overwhelming for me to take upon such a responsibility. So I started writing about 2 months later. My first book, it was a memoir. I wrote 13 chapters over the course of a few years. The book kept writing itself, actually, as life was happening. I was like, oh, I'll have it done in a few months, and not at all. It just kept writing itself. And then eventually I wrote my first oracle deck for women. It's all about self-love, self-acceptance. So I finished that. And then the first book that's actually come out is the collaborative book I did, Sacred Self. So that one came out this year in June or July. So that's officially my first published work, and that's 6 years later. So it goes to show you that life takes time. Sometimes you think, I mean, I had all these dreams of, oh, I'm going to write the book, and I'm going to do all these speaking events for women, and I'm going to change the world, and I still had a lot of work to do in my own personal life, and a lot of growing to do. And so it's been a journey. In 2019, prior to COVID, I remember I was chomping at the bit to start speaking, because I really wanted to help women in particular with empowerment. So at the time, I started like a female entrepreneur business group on Meetup. And Amy knows, I know Amy's here. She went to several of those networking events and the speaking events. And that was kind of the beginning of me speaking. So that was just so fun. I met women from all over the local area, and got into that. So I've been dabbling for a while, but kind of hiding out in the interim, still doing a lot of my own work, honestly.
Would you say, and we talk about this often on the show, that there's like nowhere to arrive to?
Yeah.
We're constantly right in that process of learning and growing and developing. And we need those times, right, of self and self-reflection and some hibernation as we're coming into winter, right? Just a few
Right.
days away, technically. Here in Florida, a little bit different, but in general,
Mm-hmm.
that hibernation and inside of community, right? Like you took that step, you took that action and did a meetup, and then you got to start finding your community, right? That's where you meet Amy. And so I love that your first book is a collaborative, piece, because Raquel herself is an author and soon to be published. She's already published once and soon to be publishing more. And she's been very supportive and instrumental in my life as well, with regards to, we have those, like life, well, I like to say life is life in, right?
Mm-hmm.
But being inside of a community that sees your vision, and knows your potential.
Right.
Was that, larger things start happening quicker. So as we're still growing and developing, I'm very, excited that Amy shared you and was able to come. So, I mean, you have this book and then, this co-collaborative book and an Oracle deck. For those people who might not know what an Oracle deck is, you want to share that for a second? I love them. So, but, just in case, somebody's like, what's an Oracle deck?
Right. Actually, I have one just to show an example. So this is an Oracle deck. This is just one example of an Oracle deck. It usually comes in a box. Not all of them do, but typically they'll have a little booklet here, and the booklet will have a little introduction on what Oracle decks are, and each card will have its own chapter. So essentially what I describe as an Oracle deck is it's a divination tool, really. And for me, a divination tool is just an extension of who we are. It's a way that human beings, if you choose this to be your tool, for you to get insight into your life, insight into your heart, and guidance from either higher self, God source energy, past loved ones, whatever it is that you believe in personally. To me, it's just another tool. And they're similar to tarot decks in the sense that tarot is also a tool. It's a tool of self-discovery. And, some people use decks, other people use music, poetry, video, books. Doesn't really matter what your medium is. I always just say choose a medium that you feel compelled and drawn to and comfortable with, and go in that direction, because some people shy away from tarot or oracle because of different reasons. And I'd say if that's the case, then don't worry about it. It might not be for you right now. And that's okay. Choose something else that you feel more maybe safe and aligned to.
Yeah. And that's the whole point of our show, right? Having so many different people to provide any tips and strategies and everything else that we can use to help us feel more peaceful, like you were saying, finding that peace inside a world that tends to be at us, right? Like coming at us, where Raquel and I always often say, life is happening and we have a choice of how we can respond or react to that. And, and inside of everything, inside your accident and all of that, it is working for you.
Yeah.
Many people who might be listening are like, I don't know about that, right? So that's why we have people like yourself and we have these conversations, on. So what was, what would you want to share with anybody? Here we are during the holidays. We say happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa. That was the one I couldn't remember the other day. And, what would you want to say to people who, this brings up I hate to use the word triggers, but triggers up the PTSD, the anxiety, there's just a lot around that. What can you share some strategies, some tips inside of your gifts that you have for people?
Right. As they're coming into the end of a year and into a new year. Yes. I think the biggest thing working with so many people, and just myself included, is to really acknowledge where you've come from, not just in your life, but this year. I would say make a list, honestly, make a list, do a vision board, do something, celebrate with yourself, with loved ones, all the great things that happened this year, all the blessings, all the awesome moments, and really rejoice in that, because I think that all too often we get very busy with life. And I think as women, as people too, but as women in particular, I find that we can be very hard on ourselves and very critical and very, we want to do so much. And it could just be all humans, men and women too. But we all put a lot on our plate. So I think it's very important to reflect on what's happened this year and celebrate, really. And what I do every year, I've been doing it with my sister actually for the last several years. Every year we get together and we have mason jars and we take a piece of paper and we make all these little we just tear little pieces up and we just put a list of things that were amazing that we're celebrating in one mason jar. And then we'll take another and put all the things that we want to let go of. So you think about like whatever it is, it's a mindset, it's a job, it's a relationship, it's anything in your life that this year you felt like, I want less of that. You know what I mean? Like I want to let that go and I want to release that. And we put them in the jar and then we burn them together. And we do a sacred ritual, you know, we do prayer and meditation. And to me, that's what I would recommend. Have a ritual, start a ritual this year, honestly, and do it every year, you know, and you can change it up throughout the year where you just celebrate your wins and you look into what it is that you're wanting to create for the next year, you know, get excited and take the chance to believe that things are possible for you in your life.
I love that. I'm a big full moon person, so
Yes.
I follow someone. So it's so ironic that you said that because that was last night. Really, like just reflecting this year, celebrating all the things. And when we say celebrating, you know, it's like to the minute moment, like to the minute. Like I am celebrating at this moment, at this time, that I'm taking this time for myself. You know, by myself. My daughter's over here, my husband's over there. Like, and I've created that space and to like do all the most of my letting go were mindsets, right? They're mindsets because it's the mindset of all of these things. And I was outside here last night. It rained in Florida and it was windy. And I've got my candle and my ritual, and I'm like trying to light the lighter, like, you know, and had it. But yeah, I did the same thing and burned it. I'm grateful, like as I'm burning what I'm letting go, like thank you, because it's not like there was a bad or a wrong, right? It's letting go to say thank you for the lessons it taught me.
Right.
Raquel and I talk about that all the time. Like thank you. Like I define gratitude in something that seems uncomfortable, and definitely you'll give me evidence. People like come on, put it in there to say, well, how am I going to find gratitude when boom, this happened? Boom, this happened, and that's for me the journey. That has been my personal journey of, you know, inside these circumstances that some could be quite uncomfortable and not, you know, some really devastating. And again, you're working with people like yourself who've been through anxiety and PTSD and all of that. May not at that moment be able to see that, but finding someone like yourself and inside of community and finding, you know, that one person or group, you can eventually have, like you said, that veil of peace come upon you, but it is a journey.
I want to share one thing. I think it's so good that you do that, and both of you, I'm sure, have your own ritual around celebrating the year. There was something I want to share because earlier this year, I was asked by one of my spiritual mentors, what do you want to let go of this year? And I remember thinking, okay, what's the biggest thing that's had a hold on me? And it's been the feeling of abandonment. And that's been the biggest pain in my whole life, like the biggest point of suffering. And of course, that's presented itself in many different ways. So I said, I want to release the feeling and the suffering around abandonment. And I remember she told me, are you sure that's what you want? I said, yes, it is. She goes, are you sure you're willing and you're ready for it to come in any form? I said, I'm open. Let's do it. Let's do it. So I said that and I meant it. And I'll tell you, the ways that it came through were not at all what I expected. I don't typically expect anymore because I just know that's not how life works. But I did have probably some expectations, you know, I was hoping it wouldn't be too bad, like not too much, right? And the things that happened were actually a lot more intense than I had anticipated and even more painful. But they did help me. They actually really helped me let go of that abandonment, and not completely, you know, it's still with me. Like that's still a point of pain for me. But I would say to anyone, if you're going to say a prayer or a meditation or have an intention, I would pass the same advice, which is be willing for it to come in any form. And it's going to show up in ways that you don't know it's going to show up in. So as long as you're open to that, and that's what you want, then get ready because it's going to be a wild ride, I'm sure. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. That's for sure.
Yeah, I love it. I love
So
it.
I just want to jump in. There were a couple of things that kind of jumped out at me. And one, when you just said be willing, is how can someone be willing to let go of something that they've held on to, or it's held on to them for
Yeah.
so long? And
Yes.
how am I going to be willing to let that go? And part two of my question is, how do we let it go?
Right.
What does letting go look like?
That's two great questions. How to be willing. I think everything starts with a desire. Everything that manifests into life starts with that desire in our heart to want something. So I would say the willingness is in the desire. If you're willing, that means you're desiring for a new experience. And having that willingness is really, I would say, if there's soil and you're taking a seed and you're putting it in the soil, that's the willingness, right? And how does it come, when you're watering that, when you're allowing the ability to let that go? You don't have to know how to let it go. I guess that's how I would answer that question. It's not an intellectual thing, because you're not going to figure it out in your mind. So you can kind of give that up. Like, don't worry about it. Like, how do I figure out how to let this go? You're not going to figure it out, because it's bigger than your mind. It really has nothing to do with the intellect. So I think for me, letting go is trusting in my heart that if I have the desire and if I have the drive and the passion, I'm showing up, right? I'm doing the work, which I would say to anyone else, you're doing the work. So trust and know and have faith that what you seek is seeking you. What you're looking for is also looking for you. So just know and trust and just be open, right? Like, get excited, have awe, live in wonder, and just wait, because what you're asking for is going to happen. It's just going to happen in ways that you don't think it's going to happen. It's going to come in conflict. It's going to come in heartbreak. It's going to come in joy. It's going to come in all these different facets that you're like, oh, wait, that's not what I wanted. Oh, no, not that, but this. That's not how it works. So I think managing your expectations is important. Know that you're not going to have control of how it comes. So be certain that what you're asking for, you really want, and know that you have to be willing to go through the fire sometimes to get there, essentially. So it doesn't always have to be ugly and painful and suffering, but there may be some of that. Most likely there'll be some of that there.
Why do you think there'd be some of that? I'm curious. I just want to know, like, the pain and suffering.
Yeah, I think I can speak not just for myself, everyone I've ever met. Honestly, that's just in my experience. I'm 45, so everyone I've met throughout my entire life journey has, if they've been willing to work through something, let go of a mindset, let go of a relationship, anything that's not serving them, there is a certain amount of suffering involved because of the attachment to that thing. So it hurts when we lose a part of who we think we are. It just does. And it's not pretty. I mean, it's not meant for everybody. Not everyone will go on this journey because it's not easy. So I think that suffering is a very powerful thing. It's a tool. And it's something not to shy away from. It doesn't mean that everyone has to suffer all the time. But I think that suffering to the way you used to be, the way you used to live, the way you used to think, it's going to be a process of kind of ripping that away. It's like uprooting, it just is. I haven't found a way to get around that. If there's anyone here that has not experienced suffering when they've made a transition, I mean, I would love to hear about it. And I think that's amazing. We all have different experiences, but I haven't met anyone yet that hasn't had some sort of something that it hurts. You know what I mean? It just hurts to become a different version of yourself, it's not comfortable. And I think what a lot of people will say that I've met is, I don't want to suffer. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to X, Y, and Z. And to me, I say, then you're not living. If you stop rejecting the suffering and just embrace it as a part of this experience, it's just as beautiful as everything else. You know, I'm not saying it's fun. It's awful to lose someone that you love, and to see someone die in front of you. It's not a fun experience, but there's blessings in every experience. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes it's through those really difficult experiences that we grow the most. So yeah, I just don't think it's possible to do it without it, to be honest with you.
So here's my take on it, and I do want to thank you. Listen, you don't grow when you are in your comfort zone.
Right.
You grow when you are uncomfortable. And if you want to change the word suffering to something less intense, then do so. But that is the space where you get the lessons. And that is why you appreciate the suffering that you have gone through or are going through. Because at the end of the day, we have to go through that to make change. You don't get diamond rings just because they pop out of the ground and they're diamonds. Understand how a diamond gets formed and created and made. It is a painful process, but it is something so rare and precious that people spend a lot of money on it because it's gone through that process of hurting and pain. That's where the lesson is. So if you want to look at something, look at what's going to come out of where you are. But we all have to go through something to get on the other side. So change the word suffering. If it's too harsh, change it. Replace it with whatever word. That's the word that Janna's using. Replace it with whatever word fits you. But understand that is a part of life. That is how we grow, we develop, and our thinking changes, is when we are going through the fire. It's the lesson that we get there. Janna, in the time that we have, do you have any one thing that you want to leave our audience with?
Stop being so hard on yourself. I mean, that's the biggest thing. If I could have told myself something so long ago, it would just be, love yourself, girl. Like, love yourself, boy. Like, you are better than you think. You're doing better than you think. Stop already. At some point, you just got to stop all the criticism. And you're never going to be perfect. So just cut it out. Like, it's a habit. Trust me, it's a habit that you can break. It takes time and intention and that desire, but you can do it. So just stop. Love yourself more. You can never love yourself too much, honestly, in my opinion, if it's healthy, nurturing, supporting love. So do that. Love yourself more, criticize yourself less, and celebrate this year that you've lived. You're still alive. You're here. And I'd say look forward to the next year. It's going to be a good one, you know. Make it a good one.
I love that. Love yourself more. Stop criticizing yourself and give yourself grace.
Yeah.
And I don't mean the woman, but give yourself grace.
Yes.
Okay. And next year will be whatever you want it to be and you create it to be. Just know that challenges will come. All right. Like I love saying this, and thank you guys so much for listening. Janna, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us here on Rise and Thrive Together. We absolutely appreciate it. We appreciate you contributing to our 7-day Healthy You Challenge that we just had. So thank you so much. We don't take it lightly when people pour into our audience. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, together we can rise and thrive. Till next time.
A world filled with peace, love, unity, and compassion. Time to bust this out and start this powerful reaction.